The hidden truth about nursing homes. What I learned from my client's most heartbreaking mistake. 3 months ago, I received a phone call that would change how I view elder care forever. Margaret, an 85-year-old woman I'd known for years, was crying on the other end of the line. "I made the biggest mistake of my life," she whispered. "Can you help me get out of here?" As someone who works closely with elderly clients and their families, I've witnessed thousands of families navigate some of the most difficult decisions they'll ever make. I've seen the relief on adult children's faces when they find what seems like the perfect nursing home for their aging parent. I've also witnessed the devastating consequences when that perfect solution becomes a prison of regret. Margaret's story isn't unique. It's tragically common, and after years of observing these situations, I can no longer stay silent about what I've witnessed. Today, I'm going to share the 6 critical truths about nursing home placement that the industry doesn't want you to know. Truths that could save you or your loved one from a decision that changes everything. Stay with me, because by the end of this discussion, you'll understand why nursing homes might not be the safe haven you've been led to believe, and more importantly, what alternatives exist that nobody talks about. The call that changed everything. Margaret had been one of the most vibrant people I knew. At 82, she was still driving, cooking elaborate meals for her bridge club, and volunteering at the local library twice a week. She had some arthritis, mild blood pressure issues, and occasional balance problems. Nothing unusual for someone her age. But after a minor fall in her kitchen resulted in a bruised hip, her daughter panicked. Within 2 weeks, Margaret found herself touring luxury senior living communities with names like Golden Sunset Manor and Peaceful Valley Estates. The marketing materials were beautiful. Smiling elderly people playing cards, gourmet meals served in elegant dining rooms, and 24/7 care just in case. It seemed like a resort, Margaret told me during that tearful phone call. They promised me independence with security, social activities, and freedom from household chores. What they didn't tell me was that I'd lose everything that made me who I am. 3 months after moving in, Margaret had transformed from a vibrant, independent woman into what she described as a ghost of myself. Her daughter, initially relieved by the decision, was now desperate to find a way to bring her mother home, but discovered it wasn't as simple as they'd thought. This conversation prompted me to examine the outcomes I'd observed over the years with other clients. What I discovered was a pattern so consistent and troubling that I felt compelled to share it with every family facing this decision. Truth 1. The independence illusion. How assisted living becomes controlled living. The first shock for most nursing home residents isn't the institutional smell or the unfamiliar faces. It's the sudden realization that their daily autonomy has vanished overnight. Margaret described her first morning. "I woke up at 6 a.m. like I always did, ready to make my coffee and read the newspaper in my favorite chair. But there was no chair, no coffee maker, and breakfast wasn't for another hour. When I asked if I could make my own coffee, they looked at me like I'd asked to perform surgery." This loss of control extends far beyond meal schedules. Even the most well-intentioned facilities operate on institutional rhythms that rarely align with individual preferences. Wake-up times, meal times, medication schedules, bathing schedules, and even bedtimes become standardized, regardless of personal preference. Consider Robert, a 79-year-old night owl who had worked the night shift for 30 years. His natural sleep pattern had him going to bed around 2 a.m. and waking at 10 a.m. Within his first week at a nursing facility, he was expected to conform to lights out at 9 p.m. and breakfast at 7 a.m. The sleep disruption triggered depression and cognitive decline that his family attributed to natural aging rather than environmental factors. The impact of lost independence. This loss of autonomy triggers what experts call learned helplessness, a psychological state where individuals stop making decisions because they've learned their choices don't matter. This isn't just uncomfortable, it's dangerous to both mental and physical health. When we remove an elder's ability to make even simple choices, what to eat, when to sleep, how to spend their day, we're not just affecting their comfort, we're affecting their will to live. Most families focus on safety when choosing a nursing home, but they rarely consider the psychological impact of institutional living. They see their loved one will be taken care of, but they don't realize that being taken care of is fundamentally different from taking care of yourself. Margaret put it perfectly. "I went from being the protagonist of my own life to being a supporting character in someone else's institution." Red flags to watch. For when touring facilities, pay attention to these warning signs. Rigid meal and activity schedules with no flexibility. Policies that require approval for basic activities like going outside. Staff who speak about residents rather than to them during tours. Limited personalization options for living spaces. No accommodation for individual sleep schedules or dietary preferences. The alternative approach. Before considering nursing home placement, explore options that preserve autonomy. In-home care services that adapt to your loved one's schedule. Adult day programs that provide interaction while maintaining home-based living. Home modifications that address safety concerns without requiring relocation. Family care coordination that shares responsibilities among relatives. Truth 2. The loneliness epidemic. Why nursing homes can be the loneliest places on earth. One of the most heartbreaking discoveries is that nursing homes can be profoundly isolating places. Margaret's experience illustrates a paradox that puzzles many families. How can someone be lonely in a place full of people? "I'm never alone. But I'm always lonely, Margaret explained. There are people everywhere. Staff, residents, visitors, but none of them are my people. My neighbors here are pleasant enough, but they're not my friends. They didn't choose to be here any more than I did. The social connection. Myth nursing homes market themselves heavily on social opportunities, group activities, communal dining, game rooms, and social hours. Families often believe this will solve their loved one's isolation. However, the reality is more complex. True social connection requires shared interests, values, and voluntary association. When you place elderly individuals together solely because they require similar levels of care, you don't automatically create community. You create a group of strangers dealing with loss. Take Margaret's dining table companions. Eleanor, 91, with advancing dementia who rarely spoke. Frank, 88, a former engineer who spent meals complaining about the food. And Dorothy, 85, who was deaf and couldn't participate in conversation. These weren't people Margaret would have chosen as friends, yet she was expected to find companionship among them. The visiting pattern. Reality. Perhaps more devastating is what happens to relationships with family and friends. Despite good intentions, visits from loved ones typically follow a predictable pattern. Month 1 to 2. Regular visits from family and friends who are curious about the new living situation. Month 3 to 6. Visits become more routine but less frequent as the novelty wears off month 6 to 12. Visits decrease significantly as family members resume normal routines. After year 1, visits often become limited to holidays and special occasions. This isn't because families stop caring. It's because visiting becomes psychologically difficult. Margaret's daughter explained, "Every time I visited, Mom seemed smaller, sadder. I started dreading the visits because I felt so guilty. It was easier to call instead." The health consequences of isolation. Loneliness isn't just emotionally painful, it's physically dangerous. Studies show that social isolation in elderly individuals has the same health impact as smoking 15 cigarettes per day. Isolated nursing home residents experience higher rates of depression, weakened immune systems, and increased mortality rates. Margaret developed what appeared to be depression within her 3rd month of residence. Her sleep patterns deteriorated, her appetite decreased, and she stopped participating in activities she previously enjoyed. Warning signs of social isolation. Watch for these indicators during visits. Your loved one seems withdrawn or disinterested in previously enjoyed activities. They spend most of their time alone in their room. They don't mention other residents by name or describe friendships. They seem eager for visits but have little to share about their daily experiences. Building real social connection. If nursing home placement is necessary, families can help maintain meaningful relationships by scheduling regular visits religiously, bringing grandchildren when possible, maintaining connections with old friends through technology, and considering companion services for additional social interaction. Truth number 3. The purpose problem. How nursing homes accidentally steal life's meaning. Margaret had been a teacher for 40 years before retiring to care for her husband through his battle with Parkinson's disease. After his death, she found new purpose in volunteer work, managing her finances, maintaining her home, and helping her neighbors with various tasks. These activities weren't just keeping her busy, they were keeping her alive. At home, I woke up with things to do, Margaret told me. I had to water my plants, check on Mrs. Peterson next door, balance my checkbook, and prepare for my volunteer shift at the library. Every task felt important because it was mine to do. In the nursing home, all these responsibilities disappeared overnight. Meals appeared without her involvement. Cleaning happened around her. Her bills were managed by her daughter. Her plants had been given away. Most devastating of all, her volunteer position was filled by someone else within a month of her departure. I became a consumer instead of a contributor, she explained. Every day was about what was being done for me instead of what I could do for others. The activity program. Illusion. Most nursing homes pride themselves on their activity programs. Bingo, craft time, movie screenings, and musical performances. These programs, while well-intentioned, often miss the mark when it comes to providing genuine purpose. Margaret described her experience. They had activities, but they felt like time fillers. Bingo isn't the same as teaching a child to read. Making a craft ornament isn't the same as organizing a fundraiser. The activities were designed to entertain us, not to make us feel needed. The difference is crucial. Entertainment provides temporary distraction, but purpose provides lasting fulfillment. When activities are chosen for residents rather than by residents, when outcomes don't matter to anyone beyond the activity room, the sense of purpose remains absent. The dependency spiral. Perhaps most insidious is how the loss of purpose creates a self-reinforcing cycle of dependency. When individuals are no longer expected to contribute, they begin to internalize their role as purely recipients of care. This learned helplessness doesn't just affect daily activities, it influences recovery from illnesses, participation in physical therapy, and overall health outcomes. People who maintain a sense of purpose recover faster from illnesses and experience better long-term health outcomes. Creating purpose within constraints. When nursing home placement is unavoidable, families can help maintain purpose by involving their loved one in meaningful decision-making about their care, finding ways for them to contribute to the facility community, maintaining their role in family decisions, and encouraging adapted versions of previous meaningful activities. Yeah. Truth number 4. The physical decline. acceleration, why taking it easy can be dangerous. Margaret's physical transformation shocked her family. Within 4 months of nursing home placement, this woman who had walked 2 miles daily and maintained her own garden was struggling to navigate the hallway without assistance. Her daughter called in panic. Is this normal aging, or is something wrong? The truth was both simpler and more complex than they imagined. Margaret was experiencing what I call institutional deconditioning, a phenomenon I've observed countless times, but one that families rarely anticipate: the use it or lose it reality. The human body operates on a fundamental principle: unused capacity disappears rapidly. This is particularly pronounced in elderly individuals. When we remove the necessity for physical activity, even basic daily tasks, muscle mass, bone density, cardiovascular fitness, and balance all deteriorate at an accelerated pace. At home, Margaret's day included numerous physical challenges: climbing stairs to her bedroom, reaching into cabinets for dishes, standing at the stove to cook, walking to her mailbox, and gardening in her backyard. These activities provided constant functional movement that maintained her physical capabilities. In the nursing home, these challenges vanished. Meals appeared at her table. Housekeeping managed her room. The elevator eliminated stair climbing. Even getting dressed became optional on days when she didn't feel like participating in activities. Documented changes over 6 months. I tracked Margaret's changes over 6 months. Month 1, slight decrease in walking endurance. Month 2, difficulty rising from chairs without using arms for support. Month 3, balance issues requiring assistance with walking. Month 4, significant muscle mass loss. Month 5, dependence on walker for mobility. Month 6, requiring assistance with basic daily activities. This trajectory wasn't inevitable, it was preventable, but the institutional environment had inadvertently accelerated her physical decline by removing natural movement challenges from her daily routine. The assistance trap. One of the most well-meaning but dangerous aspects of nursing home care is the tendency to provide assistance before it's truly needed. Staff members, motivated by efficiency and liability concerns, often help residents with tasks they could still manage independently. Margaret described this phenomenon. They meant well, but they started helping me before I asked for help. When I took too long putting on my sweater, they'd do it for me. When I walked slowly to the dining room, they'd bring a wheelchair. Each time they helped, I got a little weaker. This creates a vicious cycle. Assistance leads to decreased ability, which leads to more assistance, which leads to further decreased ability. The exercise program. Misconception. Most nursing homes have exercise programs designed to maintain physical function. However, these structured activities often fail to replace the natural movement patterns that maintain real-world functionality. 30 minutes of seated exercises twice a week cannot compensate for the loss of 8 hours of natural daily movement. Margaret attended the facility's exercise classes religiously, but continued to decline physically because the exercises were too gentle, too infrequent, and too disconnected from functional movements. Shocker. Truth number 5. The privacy and dignity. Erosion. The hidden cost of institutional care. 6 months into Margaret's nursing home stay, I received an unexpected call from her. She was whispering, which immediately concerned me. When I asked why she was speaking so quietly, her answer revealed an aspect of institutional living that people rarely discuss. "I'm in the bathroom," she whispered. "It's the only place I can have a private conversation anymore." The illusion of private space. Margaret's private room at the nursing home was anything but private. Staff members entered freely for medication administration, vital sign checks, cleaning, and wellness monitoring. While policies technically required knocking, the reality was that staff often entered while knocking, or knocked and entered without waiting for permission. "I never know when someone is going to walk in," Margaret explained. "I've been caught undressed, on the toilet, crying, talking on the phone, or just trying to rest. I feel like I'm always on stage, even in my own room." This constant accessibility isn't malicious, it's systemic. Nursing homes operate under strict requirements for monitoring resident safety and health. However, these protocols can strip away the privacy most of us consider fundamental to human dignity. The personal care reality. Perhaps no aspect of nursing home life challenges dignity more than assistance with personal care. Margaret had been independent with bathing, dressing, and toileting when she arrived. However, institutional schedules and safety policies gradually eroded her privacy in these most personal activities. "They have shower schedules," Margaret told me. "You can't just decide to take a bath when you want one, and even when it's your scheduled time, there's always someone there for safety. I haven't had a private bath in months." The loss of privacy in personal care has profound psychological effects. Many residents describe feeling infantilized by having assistance with activities they've performed independently their entire adult lives. The decision-making erosion. Dignity isn't just about privacy, it's about maintaining autonomy in decision-making. In nursing homes, even simple personal choices often require approval or accommodation from staff. Margaret described the gradual erosion of her decision-making authority. "I wanted to rearrange my furniture to better see out the window, but I had to get approval because it might interfere with their equipment. I wanted to eat breakfast later on weekends like I always did, but the kitchen closes after a certain time. I wanted to have wine with dinner occasionally, but that required special permission." These may seem like minor issues, but They represent something profound, the transition from being an autonomous adult to being managed like a child, preserving dignity in institutional settings. When nursing home placement is unavoidable, families can help preserve dignity by advocating for maximum privacy accommodations, requesting that staff respect personal space, ensuring their loved one maintains control over personal decisions, and bringing familiar personal items to create ownership over living space. Truth number 6. The exit dilemma. Why leaving is harder than anyone expects. 3 months after our emotional phone call, Margaret asked me a question I've heard dozens of times. If this was such a mistake, why can't I just leave? Her question revealed perhaps the most overlooked aspect of nursing home placement, the complex web of factors that make leaving far more difficult than entering. Less than 15% of nursing home residents who express a desire to return home ever successfully make that transition. The financial trap. Margaret's situation illustrates the most common barrier, financial entanglement. When she first moved into the facility, her daughter had taken steps that seemed practical but created significant obstacles to return. We thought we were being responsible, her daughter explained. We couldn't afford to pay for the nursing home and maintain mom's house, so we put it on the market. We sold most of her furniture because we didn't think she'd need it anymore. Within 3 months, Margaret's former life had been systematically dismantled. Her house sold quickly, and the proceeds went toward nursing home costs. The furniture, collected over decades, was sold or donated. Returning home would now require finding new housing, purchasing furniture, and rebuilding the entire infrastructure of independent living, costs that were no longer financially feasible. The physical decline barrier. Even more challenging than the financial obstacles was Margaret's physical deterioration during her nursing home stay. Her functional capacity had declined significantly, creating a cruel irony. The longer she stayed in the nursing home, the less capable she became of living independently. When assessed 6 months after her placement, Margaret required assistance with activities she had performed independently at home. The muscle weakness, balance problems, and decreased endurance that developed during her stay now made independent living genuinely unsafe. It's like being caught in quicksand, Margaret told me. The longer I stay here, the weaker I get, but now I'm too weak to leave. The family dynamics shift. Perhaps most difficult to navigate were the changes in family relationships after Margaret's placement. Her daughter had initially felt enormous relief when Margaret moved to the nursing home. When Margaret started talking about coming home, her daughter felt terrified. I finally felt like I could sleep at night, her daughter admitted. I knew mom was safe, fed, and cared for. When she started talking about coming home, I panicked. What if she fell again? What if something happened and I wasn't there? Additionally, family members had restructured their own lives around the nursing home placement. Margaret's son had taken a job promotion requiring more travel, and her daughter had enrolled in graduate school. The care coordination challenge. Even when families are motivated to bring their loved one home, the complexity of coordinating home-based care can be overwhelming. Nursing homes provide integrated services under one roof. Replicating these services at home requires coordinating multiple providers: home health nurses, aides, meal delivery, housekeeping, transportation, and emergency response systems. Margaret's daughter described her frustration. I spent weeks calling different agencies, trying to piece together a care plan. Every provider had different schedules, policies, and costs. It was like solving a puzzle with pieces that don't fit together. Prevention is key. The most important insight from Margaret's case is that preventing unnecessary nursing home placement is far easier than facilitating discharge after placement occurs. Families facing elder care decisions should explore all home-based alternatives first. Preserve the family home and resources during trial placements. Establish time limits for nursing home stays when placement is intended as temporary, and maintain the elder's involvement in decision-making throughout the process. Final thoughts. What Margaret taught me. After 8 months of nursing home residence, Margaret was able to return home, but only through extraordinary family effort and coordination. Her daughter took a leave of absence from graduate school. Her son relocated to be closer, and they assembled a comprehensive home-based care plan. Margaret's experience taught me that nursing homes aren't inherently evil, but they're often unnecessary. The decision to place a loved one in institutional care should never be made hastily or without exploring every alternative. Once that door closes, opening it again becomes exponentially more difficult. If you're facing this decision, ask yourself, have we truly exhausted every option for keeping our loved one at home? Are we making this choice out of fear rather than necessity? Are we prepared for the possibility that this decision might be irreversible? Margaret is now 86, living in her own apartment with carefully coordinated support services. She's volunteering again, cooking her own meals, and making her own choices about how to spend her days. Her story has a happy ending, but only because her family fought for it. Not every family will have the resources or ability to reverse a nursing home placement. That's why the decision to enter one should be made with full awareness of what you're choosing and what you might be giving up forever. Your independence, your privacy, your sense of purpose, and your connection to the life you've built. These aren't just comforts, they're necessities for living, not just surviving. Guard them carefully, because once they're gone, getting them back may be the hardest fight of your life. If you learned from this, don't forget to subscribe.